Item 3, the CalSTRS Business Plan for 2015-16. This is the executive staff, so I'll turn it over to our Chief Executive Officer, Jack Enos, and this is slated for 30 minutes. Jack?
As long as it
Yes.
takes to answer your thoughts on this. I did want to mention, though, now that you've approved the work plans, I have a chart here that kind of mapping out the full year, which committees on which months and all that kind of thing. So frankly, we're off to a good start. So September, this does mean we can, in fact, implement the new approach well, based on what's timing out. And Chris and I kind of talked through the investment committee needs for September. So I just want to remind everyone and remind the audience how that would look like then in September, just because since we agreed to this. So we would start out the first day, which is a Wednesday, with one committee, and that's going to be most likely the audits committee, since it's a hearty agenda, if that would be all right. And then we would then have the entire rest of the day would be the investment committee. And the idea was that the remainder of the morning would be whatever you choose to have in the closed session of the investment committee. I know you always are shaping that. And our client advisory committee would meet simultaneously with that leading up to lunch. You'd have lunch to 1 o'clock, and then you'd have 4.5 hours or more for an open session of investment committee. That month, you're doing your semi-annual investment reports, and you're doing the asset allocation study. So that's a hearty afternoon. It definitely fills that 4.5 hours. And Chris, any changes to that, or does that still work for you? Okay. And then the second day would be whatever committees are meeting. We've got the Benefits and Services Committee meeting that month, so they would be meeting, and then the board meeting. And then the idea would be, do you want me to stop there?
Just for a second. The investment committee is which day?
The first day,
The first day.
Wednesday.
in perpetuity, till we change it?
Wednesday.
Yes.
Wednesday. That was the idea, that we would be, try a new fresh approach Wednesday. Are we still good? Yeah. And then the second day, depending upon the length of the board meeting, it would be the end of the day for all the board members, with the exception of those that serve on the appeals committee. If perchance it's a short board meeting, we could also try and look at putting the appeals committee in that day, and you'd be done on the second day, rather than using the appeals committee for the morning of Friday. So let me look real carefully at that, Michelle, and see if that works to actually have it on the second day. But again, for the rest of you that aren't on the appeals committee, you could fly home or drive home on the second day at the end of the board meeting. So it looks real good as I look at all the committees throughout all the months. You know, I don't see any big pressure points. Your new subcommittee on sustainability was going to meet off cycle, so it doesn't push hard on any of these, and the agendas all look, you know, the right bite sizes. So are we all okay with that? Is that
Question from Mr. Unterman.
You referred to a new subcommittee on sustainability. I think that's not our mandate. It's on special mandate investing.
yeah? It's what, I'm sorry.
Special mandate investing.
Is that what you're going to title it?
Well, we had a
haven't come
long
up with
discussion about it at our last meeting, and I think we want to honor it. I mean, I think when we drew the charter, it was a very narrowly drawn charter about the impact on our passive investing strategy posed by these special mandates we have.
Right. And you're going to draft a charter, actually.
I'm just a little nervous about mission creep here.
Okay, good. But you are going to draft a charter and really sign off on it.
Subcommittee of the investment committee for now,
Yeah.
because
Just
it's
to
up to
generate
the
name.
subcommittee to name it and all the governance stuff, so.
Sounds good. And then I know you're taking volunteers for the committee that will actually sign off on your charter, and you'll need to have that approved through the process, you know, as you would do that.
No,
Good.
it was just such a long discussion. I didn't want to slide back.
Very fair. So does that work, everyone? Is everyone good with the timing on that for the committees? Good. Great. Okay, then on to the business plan. One of the key goals in the plan, obviously, is workforce improvements. I just wanted to start out just kind of focusing on that for a minute, because developing bench strength is always a challenge in the public sector, and we have several critical positions here in the organization that we always have to focus on as we continue to develop skills. So as you look in the audience, you can see Rick Reed is in the audience, and he's smiling. And Rick is smiling because the person on his right is finally someone at CalSTRS that he can talk to. So so David, if you don't mind standing for a minute. This is David Lamoureux, and several of our board members probably know David from CalPERS and his presentations there and his very significant role at CalPERS in the actuarial piece. So this is a super catch for us. For a long time, we've needed to make sure that we have a broader bench in the actuarial area, given its critical importance. David is from Canada originally, has a Bachelor's of Science degree in actuarial science. Yes, there actually is a degree in actuarial science, believe it or not. And he's been at CalPERS for how long now? Over 16 years. 16 years? Since 1999. Wow. Yes.
It'll be here longer.
Wow.
I hope for.
So he's had a very extensive staff to oversee at CalPERS, not only in developing the valuations, but because of the issues in local government at CalPERS, there's been many issues involving litigation that are high profile and public policy issues that he's had his hand in. So he really brings a breadth that is so welcome here. And again, I know Rick is very excited about having a colleague with that FSA after their name. So, David, welcome very much.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to thank everyone for giving me such a warm welcome, and I'm looking forward to start the next chapter of my career and to provide Rick another person who can talk actuarial stuff. I'm sure he's going to be excited. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
We continue. Treasurer John Chung has a comment or question.
Yeah, so David did a great job. So this was not unexpected. So having also being on CalPERS, for years they were waiting for CalSTRS to reach out and take David.
Are there other names you could give?
I want both to do excellently.
Yeah.
Very good. So, this last meetings I have announced a number of significant hires to you. So I think you can sense that the organization is starting to change, not surprisingly, with our aging. So back to the plan itself. Normally, we don't make a presentation around this. We take questions. I think the only thing I want to highlight on the plan for you is you can see things are starting to change in the plan in terms of the priorities and the weighting. First off, we were going to refresh this with you in a very rigorous way at the October offsite because many of the things have check marks on them that are on here. Also, frankly, I think we all felt the plan has a lot of different levels to it, from big things like making 7.5% to getting a funding plan, then to little minor issues here and there in the organization. So I think next time around we want to have a better leveling and probably a little narrowing that goes on in the next plan. But the reweighting of it is pretty obvious. Relative to the first goal, around the financial. Let me get to that page. TRB 41, ensuring a financially sound retirement system. All those goals and objectives around the funding plan, the communication of the plan, the implementation of the plan. Most of that is going forward or has already been completed. So as we've said before, the weight of that goal particularly turns to the investment branch and achieving our long-range assumptions of 7.5%. Having said that, in Goal 2, which starts on page 47, that has much more to do. And I think we recognize we're not at the level of maturity around risk management that we want to be as an organization. That continues to be a very vibrant conversation with our auditors. And we're developing, again, internal skills around that that need to continue. So there's much more to do around Goal 2. Goal 3, again, that goes around the customer service issues. Apart from our completion of the last service center in San Diego that will be done this year, many of these other issues are taking a little bit backseat to the bigger issues of the reinvention of our data systems in Goal 4. So in Goal 4, we really gave you more detail than we have in the past, so you can start to see how these major projects really break out in terms of milestones, and we can measure those for you to see how we're doing in the coming years on those projects. So hopefully you can see the emphasis on Goal 4. And it's not just in the reinventions of our systems. Chris has a number of those objectives relative to investments on there as well, and we have a number relative to human resources and succession planning. So it's a bit of more inward view, if you will, looking at workforce process and improvement, but that's clearly the bulk of the energy, at least for the next year, if not going forward. The only outlier here that can throw this whole thing up in the air and change what we do would be if, in fact, that prospective ballot initiative gets traction and ends up heading toward a process of being on the ballot around pension reform. The impact of that at first reading is extraordinarily expansive and disruptive to teachers' pensions. So we'll need to see where that goes in the coming months, and if that becomes a real item, then the focus of the organization will certainly have to change in the coming year. So all the executives are here, and we can take questions on any part of this that caught your attention.
We do have Mr. Unterman.
I do have a question about that last point. Given the inherent campaign activity, I understand the teachers' unions would get quite engaged. I'm trying to get my mind around what would change in the work of the staff here.
Well, a couple things. One is in the immediate short term, we would have responsibilities to provide a fiscal and legal analysis of that. So we certainly have those responsibilities now that provide basic education to those parties that need to be reviewing that, whether that be the LAO or the Attorney General or those parties that just want to understand that. Secondly, if it really appeared in 2016 that there is the possibility of passage, there is such enormous, and I have to triple underline that, administrative implications for the administration of the benefits. We would have to, I think, do some scenario planning for the organization rather than just wait to see how people vote in November. I think that would be not a good thing. So I would expect we would start doing that. But it would be incredible. And not only does it affect the benefit administration, but it absolutely affects the funding of the system that we have viewed as a closed item. So we would have to be thinking about that. It would circle back into financial issues as well.
Okay, no, that's helpful.
Anyone, any other questions for Jack or the other executives? Okay, thank you, Jack. Seeing none, we'll go on to item 4, which is the Business Renew Oversight Assessment and Information. Diana Akuf, if that's pronounced correctly. No, what's the appropriate?
Akuf?
Akuf. Akuf?
ACUF.
Akuf. Ms. Akuf, thank you. Come on up. And welcome. You're welcome.
So I am here on behalf of
Diana, is your mic on? I can't tell from back here. If not, just kind of bring it closer to you. Yeah, it wasn't amplifying
Sorry.
back here very well.
If your colleague informed you of the desire and interest of this board to really give us a very high overview of anything mission critical that we need to be aware of, and essentially on budget,
Right.
on time, et cetera.
Correct.
So back to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So on pension, in light of that request, we have, only good things to say right now. Things are progressing. CGI is beginning to bring their staff on board, and the project is starting to roll. So if you have any questions on pension, if not, I'm going to go ahead and move on to data prep.
We do have a question from
Okay.
Mr. Rosensteel. Mr.
Sure.
Rosensteel.
So, I may have missed this in prior reports, but the discussion at the very top of page 2, the BR Independent Project Oversight Team. So now, is that different from Grant Thornton? Because I thought what we were doing was we were hearing from our consultants.
Yes,
And our consultants were independent of
that's correct.
the team that's doing this on our staff.
We are
And-
tasked to do independent oversight of business renew projects.
So who is the BR Independent Project Oversight Team?
That would be me, Graham, and the rest of my colleagues.
So it's Grant Thornton.
Yes.
Okay. So can we refer to you as Grant Thornton so we're clear that it's our
We,
consultants?
we often call it Graham Thornton. Yeah,
Whatever, but I just was confused because I didn't know whether that team
sure.
was more than just your firm.
No, sir. It is
It's
our
your-
firm.
Okay.
So we want to make note of that in future reports,
Right.
that that's how it appears,
That
okay?
it's your team.
Absolutely.
That it's your
Thank you very
firm,
much.
right. Okay, great.
Are you ready for data prep?
One other question.
Sure, sir.
So, and this may not be a question for you, but the additional key pension solution positions that are needed, that circle is more yellow than green. So it says all three positions are intended to be filled through contract positions, and CalSTRS has received offers for each position. So I'm not quite sure what that means, and are we expediting that since this is so critical, or how long is it going to take to fill those positions?
These are the technical contract positions that we've solicited RFOs out for, and we are currently interviewing those prospective contract employees to come on board to fill those roles.
Okay, and I guess my question is, sometimes contracts take so long at CalSTRS, and I just
Yeah, I
want to
think
make,
that- I
want to
think-
make sure that these are being expedited.
They are being expedited, and Ashish has worked really closely with Lisa Blotnick to get some streamlined processes in place to get these RFOs out and hire a little bit more efficiently. So I think that we've done a good job. We are just getting the candidates in for interviewing.
And I would say we have a dedicated procurement analyst that's working on all the business review efforts. So once we get the RFO on the street, we're quickly giving the information to the business can do their evaluation and get those people that they're interested in scheduled for interviews. And then quickly, once we get the notice of intent to award out, we're working on the contract. So we do have a dedicated person working closely with business review and all these efforts.
And do we have then an expected date by which these three positions will be filled and on board?
Well, I would look to Ashish.
Yeah,
and-
so we are almost there for technical PM. We are ready to give the offer tomorrow. So I did the second round yesterday, completed. So technical PM will be on board within 2 to 4 weeks. And then solution architect and data architect is already on the street. So we are getting maybe in 4 to 6 weeks, we'll see the response.
So when we meet again in September, we should be able to hear that these three positions have been filled?
Oh, positive. I'm positive.
Okay, good, thanks.
But I think these all technical position is not right now is critical part because it's just we are hiring. We already hired a technical acting PM is working. Acting technical PM is working right now, and the solution architect is not needed until November December timeframe because we are in the planning phase.
So we do have a staff person, a CalSTRS staff person that has the competencies who's filling in for that technical PM currently.
Okay, and then the discussion on the next page about the forecast for the next period says that the project team anticipates that the following activities should be concluded prior to the next report cycle, that the contract will be signed by CGI and CalSTRS, and the implementation phase of the project will officially start June 30th. So earlier in the report, it was said, though, that the contract with CGI would be signed by now. Yeah. Okay, so these two issues that are listed as forecast for the next period were all both completed in this period. right? So these really aren't forecasts for the next period. So what are the forecasts for the next period? Meaning, I assume, what we should expect to see happen between now and our meeting in September. Is that what we mean by forecast for the next period?
When we're reporting on that particular time frame, we are trying to give you a view of what we have seen occur up to the time that we're writing that. We expected to see the contract signed before we do our next report, which will be cut off next week. So when we're saying the next period, we're talking about our reporting period.
How often is your reporting period?
Every month, monthly.
Okay, so could
I
you
can
clarify that
for you.
then going
Sure.
forward, what we mean by reporting period?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Rosenstiel?
Not on the move to data prep.
Okay, so Ms. Yamani, there were two items that Mr. Rosenstiel brought to our attention. One is the name, you've got both of them. Thank you very much. Back to you, Mr. Mesikoff.
Sure. So moving on to data prep, there's a strategic path forward group that has been working to help define the decision points for what should happen with the data items that have been identified as issues for cleaning or for conversion. So with the advent of this group coming in, we saw a little misalignment between the group and the team. So now this group has gotten into a cadence. The alignment is beginning to show, and so we see that the two are starting to gel and work together very well, taking away reducing one of the risks that we saw for the project. The resource issues that we had previously reported to you, many of them have been addressed or in the process of being addressed. So the business has made an agreement with the project team to address one of the issues. The other one, which is a testing issue resource, is being addressed now by the technical services group. We expect resolution to that shortly. There is still a lag in where the schedule is as compared to where it was expected to be. We expect that the work that the focus group is doing and the work that the project team are doing, and now that they have alignment, they're gaining traction, they'll be able to prioritize their items to try to reduce any impact of that lag. We're not sure at this time what exactly that's going to look like. It's still pretty new. I'm not deeply concerned about this, but it is something that we continue to monitor.
Any questions? Mr. Rosenstiel.
So the misalignment that you're talking about is the discussion of strategic path forward focus group?
Yes.
And so it says this issue is expected to be resolved in the coming months. So you're telling us that it has been resolved now?
It is largely resolved. They're working very closely together. They're doing a good job of ensuring that they're providing each other what is needed to keep progress on both halves. I don't think that it's fully resolved because it's still a new camaraderie, a new team between the two. I expect that it's not going to be an issue, but it will continue to be a low-level risk.
And the resource availability atu, which has some red there, is that?
Yes, so there was a business resource that was needed by the project. That was a resource that was proving very difficult to fill. So the project team and the business area that would normally cover the scope of work that would be for that resource have come to an agreement of how they can fill the resource need in the time frame that they need it. So I'm hopeful that this is going to be, a really good solution for both so that everyone can have the resource they need. Right now, our concern is the testing resource, and technical services is working to resolve that for the team.
So
This is a new change from the time that report was written. Is when between then and now is when this resource has been identified. The resource strategy for fulfilling the business resource has been identified. So that's why the message you're getting from me today is slightly different than what you see because it has improved since I wrote that report, sir.
when was the report written?
It was just around 3 weeks ago.
So I wonder whether we could somehow get more current reports, because it seems that a lot happens between the time that this report is written and the time we meet to discuss it.
So on that point, for this specific item, given the magnitude of this issue and the importance to the organization, and understanding the timeline for publication and getting things to agenda, et cetera, there's that gap. We would appreciate and direct staff and our consultants to be sure when these types of changes are made, that we get an updated version communicated
That would
to
be
us.
great.
Okay, so that there's not a gap between what's being presented to us and what we have in written materials. Fully understanding that there's a timeline issue that's going on and it's a fluid project, but given the magnitude of this project, I think it's important that we have really up-to-the-minute
I agree with you.
analysis of where it's at. So thanks for pointing it
Yeah,
out.
that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Not a
Miss-
problem.
All right, Ms. Higa?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on the question that, that Paul asked. So on the resource issue, you've indicated that there are some solutions that are kind of underway that the staff is pursuing. If they continue on that path and implement those, do you anticipate that we'll be out of red by September?
I am getting ready to write a new report, and they will not be in red.
Okay.
You know, the cutoff date for my next assessment is Monday, and at that time, I anticipate upgrading them.
Anything else, Ms. Higa? Thank you. Back to Mr. Rosensteel.
Yeah, well, that just raised a question. So you produce these reports monthly?
Yes, sir.
And so what happens is that when we meet, we just get your most recent monthly report, is that right?
Typically, what happens is we write the executive summary of our report, which is what you see before you. And so, yes, you're getting the most recent that we have as of the date that we must submit materials.
So this isn't a report to the board. This is a report that you provide to the staff.
That is a portion of the report that we provide to the
Okay,
staff.
and so I guess my concern is, again, I thought you were a consultant to the board.
We are, sir.
So I'm trying to understand why what we're getting is a summary of a report that you're writing to the staff rather than a report to the board.
Maybe Ms. Licknock, I think she wants to add in, so maybe
Okay.
Cassandra, do you want to add to
Yes.
the commentary?
What Grant Thornton does is provide the monthly report to us, but at report writing for board presentation and reporting to you, it's the additional updated information that would happen from a report writing period up to the point of the material being due. There is a lag a little bit after that because things are submitted and published, and we will now include an updated one if anything happens in between that period of time. But whatever's updated to the point of that material being prepared for your reporting is included in this report.
But I'm not asking so much about the timing. I'm asking more about the audience. That I understand that what our consultants have to say is important for the board, for staff to hear, but and for them to understand and report to us on the status, they've got to be working with staff. But this is a report to the board, and I think this is an ongoing issue we have of having consultants who see themselves as representing the board rather than an extension of staff. I think there's a distinction, and I just want to make sure that we're recognizing that distinction here. In other words, I would like the discussion in here about what we can expect by the next reporting period. It would seem to be, it would be more important for that to be for the board to know by the time the board next meets and next gets a report from you, what you think we should expect staff to have done, which is different than what you're writing now. And I don't know, it just raises some concerns about making sure that you're working on our behalf and reporting to us and helping us hold staff accountable.
Before we get a response to that, because what I'd like to do, Mr. Rosenstiel, is get Mr. Unterman's comments and then get some consensus around whether or not the point that Mr. Rosenstiel is raising is something that the board wants to change relative to what you're reporting to us. We clearly have given direction that how information is reported back to us needed to be changed, and Ms. Higa's worked with Graham and staff, and that has changed. Now we're hearing from one board member that perhaps the report needs to look differently, and then what I'd like to find out whether or not there's consensus on the board that that's what we want. Because if it is, then we got to clarify what that is. But, so let me take Mr. Unterman's comment or question.
Yeah, I've been following this, and the pattern of reporting on its surface seems a little bit off, and I get that. On the other hand, it strikes me that you're really doing something other than just being a commentator to the board. You're being our eyes and ears on the ground every day. And I think it's just not, it would be overwhelming to kind of hear every little bit of advice that you're giving to the staff. So I think I'm real comfortable on the operating on the assumption that at our board meetings, you're going to report to us current information about what you think we need to know. And I guess if you're giving advice to the staff and they're not taking it, that falls into that category.
Mr. Unterman, you're absolutely correct. That was when we engaged with Grant Thornton. That was exactly the purpose, the commitment of resources and capital to this project was the investment with them at this point was they were going to be our eyes, ears on the ground on a daily basis, and that investment, we were told up front, was worth it relative to long-term cost, et cetera. That over the long term, it was the right place to put some investment on the front end, having someone like Grant Thornton working on behalf. So we're hearing kind of two different things. Mr. Unterman saying it's okay.
No, I think we have to reconcile the two. I mean, otherwise our oversight role would be hopeless. You get that. But I think we want to reconcile now the reporting cycle so that we know when we meet, you're reporting on the most current period and not just about that last month, but what's happened between meetings.
I think in the down months, the idea was they would meet with you.
Correct.
The chair and the vice chair, just, I don't want to lose track of that. That was meant to be silent running. It really was meant to be.
There was a phone conversation between the chair, the vice chair, Ms. Licknock, Graham has been on the call, Aisha, I think, has been on the call, Chris has been on the calls as well. So if the board wants something different, let's know what it is. And so let me go to Ms. Higa, and then we'll go to Mr. Rosenstiel.
I agree with what both Paul and Tom are saying, and I think it'll help if we can just sync up on the reporting. So just as an example, you're saying now that if the resolution on the resources resolves itself, you'll be able to take this out of red in your monthly report. I don't know if, since we won't be meeting again and hearing a report until September, I would want to make sure that we knew that an issue that you had raised to us in July was resolved when we meet in September. I don't want that to get lost just because we're not hearing from you in August. So I think it's really thinking about what you've been reporting to the board and also, sort of closing loose ends upon next reporting, especially if there is a gap, and then making sure that the information is as current as possible.
Just Mr. Rosenstiel?
Yeah, and let me just clarify, my issue wasn't that we need to see a different report. My issue was wanting assurance that the report that is being delivered on a monthly basis to staff also functioned for the purposes for which it's supposed to serve us. And if the same report does that, that's fine. But it came as news to me that what we were seeing was just a summary of the report that is being given to staff. And if there's nothing, if Grant Thornton is delivering that report, understanding that they're working for us and understanding that they are, in doing so, providing us with summary, which I completely agree with Tom about, summary information of the important things we need to know. That's fine. But I just had a question about it when I heard it was the same report that was going to staff. That's all.
Are we clear on
Can
the
I-
direction that the board is giving to Grant Thornton and to staff? And if you could just summarize back what you've heard to make sure that it's clear. And I know Ms. Higa has been working with Graham and Cassandra, and Ms. Higa, would you be so kind as to continue to be that liaison back with Graham and Cassandra on the comments that the board has made to date, and to make sure that that's followed up, because you've done a terrific job to
And
date
you
with
still
that.
like your meetings, the ones we're doing with you in the intervening months, would you like those to continue?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
my only comment is if Harry and I were on the call in August and something came up, I would assume Harry would send an email to the entire
Yeah.
board if there was a big red flag or.
Right.
And essentially, for the board's purpose and others who are not on the call, I simply ask for 3 questions. Is the project on budget? Is there a risk that we need to be immediately aware of? And is it on time?
Right. And I do remember a bit about the timing of the report. It's starting to come back to me. Originally, when we started a long time ago, you actually all wanted to wait till the very end to make sure the board had the up-to-date information. And then we had a request from one board member that said, we'd like to get these ahead of time to think about the issues, and it resulted in the current lagging in the process. So we can make it more, as long as you're comfortable getting something right then, close to the finish line. I just want to make sure everyone's needs are met here.
I have
In the-
I want the
what I
50-page
thought I
report.
heard was we can still provide this report, and if there was any substantive changes that needed to be pointed out, we could provide you the update at the presentation time, which
Yeah.
would still give you the
Or-
opportunity. You don't want that?
72 hours before. We get it.
Okay,
So
72
it's a few days before we meet, Cassandra, so a couple of days before. Just as the PowerPoints are put up on the board website, any updates or amendments to this report, just
Okay.
post it up on the website, and Danielle can send us an email saying
Okay, if
it's
that
been
works,
updated.
we'll go that way.
Okay,
We got it.
we'll take one more comment on this issue. I think we're clear.
Okay.
Mr. Unterman?
Yeah, I'm sort of hoping that there isn't a need for a lot of urgent.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
Last-
That's the goal.
That's the goal, right, Tom?
I'm totally.
We don't want a lot of updates, a lot of reports, a lot of
I think we're
calls.
making a little bit much of
That's
this.
Yeah. We're not going crisis to crisis on this project, so it's not meant to be that approach, so,
Thank you.
thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Okay, so item 5A, B, and C. 5A is the approval of the minutes from the open session on June 11th. 5B is board member education. There's a revised copy. Also would like to make note that Ms. Dillon has been asked to speak at the NC PERS conference in Berkeley. I believe it's in Berkeley or in Berkeley later this month. I think it was in August. So that's added to the agenda at a nominal cost. Ms.
That's
Dillon
the
lives
same
here,
one
and
that Paul and I were
Paul
at,
and Ms. Hendricks and Mr. Rosensteel will be attending, so please make note of that. And 5C is the approval of the employer reimbursements for the board member. That's Ms. Dillon, myself, and Ms. Hendricks. Why don't we do 5A and B, and then we'll do 5C alone, so those of us that are affected by 5C won't vote on 5C. Is that appropriate, Mr. Bartow? Would that be appropriate? Yes. Thank you. So 5A and 5B, a motion to, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. 5C,
Do you mind if I guess I didn't, what is this UCLA corporate governance thing? I've never heard of it before. That's different than the UCLA. Is it the same thing?
It's a director certification
It's the
program.
same-
It is.
So they call it corporate governance? Okay.
Yeah, I
just-
guess, yeah,
That's interesting. Okay.
yeah, from their
I'll talk to you
standpoint.
later. Yeah.
And again, for some of you aren't familiar with that, UCLA conducts a good quality 3-day program. I've gone through it. Sharon's gone through it. Harry's gone through it. Some of our former board members have gone through it, and they bring in UCLA professors to really go through best practices on boards of directors for those couple days. And so our newest board member is going to do that.
so I'd like the record to show with 5C, Ms. Dillon, Ms. Hedrick, and myself will refrain from voting. So could you deal with that?
So you need a motion from a board member to.
So moved?
Then call for a vote.
You've got some public
You want to
comment
make public comment first?
back there.
Oh, we do have a public comment from Jennifer from California Teachers Association. I can still run the vote. Thank you, Ms. Dillon. Jennifer.
You can abstain.
Good morning, Jennifer Baker with the California Teachers Association. I just wanted to know on item 5C that the various stakeholder groups really look to have elected board members participate in various workshops, speak at various events to understand what the CalSTRS board is discussing. So I did want to know, it's very important to stakeholders, you know how passionate we get, but both active and retired stakeholder groups within all the various organizations really look to have a presence of elected board members. So I just wanted to make a note of that and appreciate their participation.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. So 5C, there's been a motion properly moved and seconded to approve 5C. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Item 6 is the committee reports. They too are on consent and information. Do those have to be read? No, okay. All right, item 7, items referred by the committee for board decision. Did we have any items referred? Item 8 are new business items and information requests. Ms. Yamani, can you go through those for us, please?
Sure. I have under item 2, I have 2 items. One is the request for the 5-year cost of the consultants to be provided before the October meeting, and the second is to get the data actual dollar cost on a 5 to 10 year period on the lump sum death benefit paid out. And on item 4, I have 4 refer to Grant Thornton as Grant Thornton, clarify what the next period or report cycle is, requesting updated information on important items 3 days before the meeting, and be clear that the Grant Thornton report to the board is as the board's representative.
I'd like to add one other, in a time-sensitive manner, sometime perhaps before the end of the calendar year, so sometime in the fall, I would like to have an update from staff on how the implementation of credible compensation regulations are actually taking place in the field in school districts, how that's working to date, lessons learned, what's going well, what's not, what can be done differently. So if we could have some update on that in a report to the board in the fall. Thank you. Item 9 is the draft agenda for the next committee meeting, which is in September.
That's purely reflective of the work plan we just
That's
looked
the
at.
work plan.
It's just literally off that work
Okay,
plan.
thanks, Jack. 9A, opportunities from comments from statements from the public. Seeing none, we will go into closed session.
We do have one small item in the closed
Yeah,
session.
we'll go into
then we're
closed session and
ready
we'll
for
have
lunch.
lunch, yeah.